Hey, welcome to noise11.com. Simon Rashleigh, who I've known as Simon Rashleigh for 30 so years. Never did I know until this year that Simon Circus was your alias, Simon, all because of this Schism 21C. So we're going to find out a bit about the history of my old mate that I didn't know anything about all those years ago. You had a hidden past, Simon. I did. You kept this from me.
Before I went into record company land, because I'm an old record company person, I was in bands. Yeah. And that's how I got started in music. Well, actually, the very earliest thing was music retail, but then I got into the band side of things and did bands for 10 years. And the most significant of those bands was probably Schism. Back in the day, we weren't called 21C then. We're probably the only Schism around as far as we knew. And we did quite well doing a lot of indie gigs. We played the Crystal Ballroom. We played alongside bands such as INXS, The Birthday Party, Hunters. And we released a cassette album that was sold through Gaslight and Missing Link, and some of those were sent over to Japan and Germany. So, yeah, that was our indie beginnings from the very early time of 1980 through to 1983 or 4, and then we morphed into another similar band called Illustration, and that went till about 86. And we had Steve Williams, who later joined Real Life and Pseudo Echo in Illustration with us.
Right. Yeah. Well, let's get off the Schism 21C, 21st century. Let's go to Schism 20th century, which was never 20C, but, as you said, just Schism. Take us back to 1980. How did Schism form?
Coming all back from sort of prog backgrounds in bands, I was in a band called Window View, and Richard Zatorsky from Real Life was also in Window View. And we were doing a lot of prog, which are trying to be a bit like an Australian Genesis, you might say. This is just when punk and new wave was starting to unravel into the world. And anyway, we realized that we weren't getting many gigs, so everyone was getting onto punk and new wave. And so we decided to split because, we were in the wrong era, so to speak. And Richard went on to, I think, form a band called Danger Dancer, and I retired a little bit for a while. But then the band, other members of the band, particularly Gordon, our drummer, came and saw me and said, look, we've started this other band, which we want to form, to be a bit more sort of like prog meets new wave. Do you want to be part of it? And so we started experimenting and putting stuff together, and we ended up with the name Schism, which we thought would be quite appropriate. It sort of had a certain edge to the name, knowing that's what Schism's usually about, churches splitting in half. And we had a little bit of religious content in some of our lyrics as well. So that's how Schism got started. We went through 5 lineups over the career. We started out with 2 lead singers. One was an actor called Jay Mannering, who did some work in some Australian films. He left a bit early, but he wrote the song City Insects for us before he did. And then we evolved through our prog stage, and we had, I suppose, a bit of soul searching round about lineup number 4, and we decided to really embrace the synth rock, synth pop side of things. And Scott Griffiths had joined us by then on keyboards, and he's quite well known for being a bit of a session player. He played on the Braithwaite album. And he was in the Shantuzis too, by the way, later on. He was a major songwriter, and we had a very sort of ultra-voxy sound as Schism. And that's what the cassette album really has, that sort of feel to it, like we're a bit of an Australian ultravox, so to speak. Yeah. So that was pretty much Schism. We went through the prog stage and then the synth pop stage. But in coming forward, 40 years later, looking at the material, when we went back and had a listen to it, we really wanted to retackle some of the old prog stuff, which had this new wave element to it. And that was the stuff we decided to re-record as Schism 21C. And the reason we did Schism 21C is because there was all these other schisms in the world now, including a Tool cover band called Schism. And to get any sort of notice on the internet, we thought we'd better add something to the name. So we put 21C for the 21st century Schism.
The live concert was also, I guess, something that was fully aligned with the sound of the music, the shadow characters, the
Yeah.
surreal light shows. Is that something that you've continued into these current performances?
To a degree, yes. We haven't had the shadow characters because we've really pared down. Schism moved from the shadow characters into just being a bit more sort of a glamorous, kind of slightly gossy looking band. Back then, the shadow character, David Morgan, became our bass keyboard player in Schism in the later lineup. So, and Vera is still a friend in the background working with us. So we lost the shadow characters, but me as Simon Circus, I was a very theatrical character back then, and I decided that I needed to do that again. But how can I be? I can't be the pretty boy that I was, but maybe I can be in an interesting older Simon Circus. So I've gone back for the whole goth makeup, probably going more goth than I was back in those days in presenting our image. So we've still got a quite a visual show. We've got our original lighting guy as well, who does our shows at gigs, Tom Orchard. So yeah, there is quite a slice of the theatrical Schism now in the Schism 21C stage presence. In fact, we've got a video coming out soon, a live video of us soon. It's going to be released on YouTube very soon.
If we go back to the day, it was a very turbulent time for music. Everything was
Yeah,
changing so fast. You talk about
it was.
Ultravox. I was hearing early Human League
Yes.
prior to Phil
Loved early
taking over.
Human League. Yeah.
Yeah, um,
They were an
and
influence, early Human League. Yeah.
yeah, and I guess even over the course of the short time you were together, we got into the whole new romantic movement, didn't we?
Yes. Yeah.
How did that impact and influence Schism?
Well, it's a very interesting story there is that my ex-wife, the mother of my children, Sue Rashleigh, was once known Sue Grack. She was over in the Blitz nightclubs when Boy George and Steve Strange and all those guys were getting into it. And she was there the night that actually Bowie came to the Blitz Club and met him. And
Wow.
she knew all these guys. And she came out, and I met her at Inflation Disco because they had a Blitz night on at Inflation, and we used to go as the Schism guys. And I met Sue there and found out she was also a makeup artist. And she became my makeup artist for Schism. And then later on, of course, romantic things happened and we became, an item. But yeah, Sue was part of that gang. And to really confirm that, this was quite fascinating. When I was at Festival Records, we had Spandau Ballet Tour, and they're playing. They had a party at the after show party at the Hilton Hotel. Anyway, they rocked in and they noticed Sue and they recognized her straight away. I said, "Oh, Sue!" I recognized her from the Blitz night. So we had, you might say, with Schism, early Schism, a bit of a guide through Sue because she had the makeup talent and helped put us together towards leaning into that sort of new romantic curve, you might say.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I should have
Um,
given Sue a call before this interview, and she could have done this for me
so
instead of
so
the
yeah, so
$10
that
paint job I do before every interview.
yeah. Well, anyway, so look, that was a factor, her coming in and helping us to style up, you might say. I mean, we were a prog band trying to embrace the whole new wave thing. We didn't call it post-punk. Wasn't the term wasn't invented yet, but we really wanted to have that new edge to like a proggy kind of side to things. Um, the only other band I can think of that was doing something like that was probably UK with John Wetton and a few of those guys. Um, anyway, we really sort of worked that into our set, that consciousness of a new age sort of attitude on old prog stuff. And it sort of evolved from there. We had really busy bass lines, which you can still hear in the Schism 21C stuff, thanks to our fabulous bass player, Pog, Peter German, who was also in the Astro Boys back and he came in later in those days. But he was an amazing bass player. And I think his style of bass playing is a real key signature element to the Schism sound that we've retained in redoing the stuff and trying to recreate his work in these songs.
Because he was very prog rock inspired, wasn't
Yes, he was. Yeah. I failed to mention that when we got first together, he'd just come from a band, along with Gordon, our drummer, band called Sounds Aghast. And they were doing the theatrical proggy sort of side of things. And anyway, that finished up and they wanted to try something a little bit more akin to the sounds of the time, which we now know as new wave or post-punk, embracing that. So the Schism experiment was born in trying to do those two sort of things. And we also had Christopher Gordon as our original keyboard player, who's gone on to do very big things as well. He's a quite a famous film composer now, doing soundtracks like Mao's Last Dancer and uh, Master and Commander. He worked on that with Ivor Davies. So yeah, he's doing a lot of stuff still in film composition, and he's in the background working with us as well with Schism, to the point that the next album might actually be an orchestral sort of symphonic rock album that he's putting together of the other stuff that we haven't touched yet of Schism. So Schism's an evolving project, which is not just about Gordon and I. It's also got the third element, Christopher and Sydney, doing stuff, and we've already recorded stuff for that.
Yeah, well, you and Gordon have been working together for a long, long time.
Yeah, we're back to Window View with Richard Zatorsky. That's our earliest thing together. Had Glenn Sharp and Michael Wilson in Window View, so that proggy sort of Genesis wannabe band that we were. And I was trying to channel Peter Gabriel in that sort of those times, which kind of seeded my theatrical element coming through later on. Yeah,
there's definitely a Peter Gabriel visual, isn't there, with what he was doing makeup wise and what you
well, he's one of my. If I had to go through my major vocal influences, I mean, Gabriel would be number one in terms of that whole theatrical thing. Probably a bit of Fee Waybill from the Tubes as well, and that theatrical thing. But voice-wise, for me, two of my key influences are not the same. Gabriel to a bit, but Howard Devoto from Magazine, and also Brian Eno's voice, his voice, I've sort of channeled a bit into my sound, and a bit of Ozzy Osbourne as well, who I got to meet, which was fabulous. Yeah.
And I might put a link to your Ozzy Osbourne, Billy Pennell, because after Ozzy passed away a few weeks ago,
yes,
this just popped up on YouTube for me one night, and there's young Simon, the little baby face Simon.
And I was on at Channel 10 recently doing a whole Ozzy sort of background story as well. I don't know if you got to see that.
Yeah,
because I spent a week with Sharon and Ozzy. Fabulous people.
Yeah, you were on Channel 10 that night. I was being your competitor that night. I was on the 7:30 report. So.
All right. You're doing your bit on it, yeah.
Yes, we were competitors. Let's go back to that cassette release, because what I find fascinating about the cassette. By the way, let me. Oh yes, let's see what the old cassette looked like.
So this is it here. As you can see, it's still got the Gaslight record sticker on it. Yeah.
Wow. That's the collector's item from back then. Has the new one? Has this one? Have you done this one as a cassette as well?
Well, with that one there, with the material that's on there, the old material, we have in fact taken. We did do a private release of CDs back in the early 2000s, where I digitized all the old tapes because they're going to go. And we privately released Lurking Misfits, which is the earlier proggy stage, and Another Vision of Schism, which is more the synth pop sort of stage, and a few other sort of crossover tracks. So a lot of the stuff we're doing now is probably more from this album, and the stuff that's on here might be redone in a future album. I've got permission from the other guys to do that. So that might be future material coming through. We also are considering releasing on CD and digital a remastered version of that, which already has been remastered at Toyland Studios. So that could be coming out as back catalogue later on. Yeah.
Back in the day, how close did Schism get to actually breaking it on a big level?
Well, we started off... we had some really good shows, and if you read the liner notes of the album, we had Sean Bowley from Eden, who was a major fan back then, documenting what it was like and how we were doing quite well. We even had young Shudo Echo as one of our supports in the beginning, and then later on we became their supports. So, but we're a little bit weird for record companies to probably take us on board. We certainly had whispers in our ears of things, and we certainly had support from people like Nucleus Talent Booking Agency, and later on Premier Artists as well. They were all sort of looking at us and giving us a bit of a hand. But in terms of a record label coming in, looking at us, we didn't quite have that fully polished commercial sound, and so we just didn't get the leg up to have a shot at it at the time. And I look back and I think we maybe were just that little bit too weird and not polished enough, unlike someone like Shidowek or Kids in the Kitchen, who really did offer that polish. I mean, what they were doing. So yeah.
I guess Schism isn't written up about like bands like Pseudo Echo. Does this give you an opportunity to go back to that page in history and slot your portfolio back in so that in the future
Yeah, well, we
people will know this band?
Yeah, well, we're certainly out there pushing that, and we've certainly invested a lot into this project to make that happen, putting out the stories and the old photos, etc. And I think that because we took the approach of we're more interested in preserving our art rather than trying to be get some old fame happening. Um, I think that was a wise decision because I think it's paid off with the listen of this album. We've really gone more for the art and to do what we wanted to do in a modern setting, probably giving it more of a dark wave edge because of the where music is now. There's not much mainstream music around anymore. It's more about what camp of alternative do you belong to. So I think yeah, we've sort of oriented ourselves towards that gothic dark wave camp to some degree, but then we've also creating some new stuff here. Like we had a couple of our tracks. We had Ian McFarlane from the Australian Rock and Pop Encyclopedia label our first single Think Tank as goth prog, of all things. So we have got some areas which maybe we are creating some new ground. I mean, back in the 70s and 80s, it was a mortal sin to try and bring new wave and prog together. So we probably should have been burned at the stake back then for doing that, but we did, and now we're sort of playing around with it again with this album. We've got very proggy tracks like City Insects and Only the Shell Remains, and then we got other ones that are just very much the dark wave track like Pray Pray. So yeah, it's a bit of a mixture of styles, but we just wanted to capture what we were in this new setting, Gordon and I. Yeah.
So, Only the Shell Remains, which is the title track, as everyone can see there. Is that
Yeah.
a sort of play on the difference between Schism 21C and Schism 20th century?
Well, we have tried to recreate that song. I mean, when we did that song back in the 80s, it was a bit bizarre and odd because it had this carnival-like atmosphere to it. And then we had these ranting priest. We have kind of tried to recreate that and update it in a way. So if anything, they don't compete, they sort of meet in the middle, I think, with that track. And just for anyone listening, it's about turning an old Christian cathedral into an amusement parlor and decking it out with religious themed attractions. So that's what it's a bit of a crazy song in that regard. We've got nuns serving hot cross buns and gargoyles with megaphones and all sorts of interesting characters in that song as lyrics go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
So
saw
we've
the
got the
back
whole
of the
theme
album
around it.
cover. See, there's
Yeah,
the back
so
of the album cover. I was half expecting Sister Janet Mead to be doing backing vocals.
but well, I'm being a bit controversial with I was directed the art of the back of the album cover. So what we've done there is that because in my personal interest, I am what you might call an occultist. I have an interest in studying the occult and have for quite a few decades. I wanted to present in the background because we're doing the whole revival of this Christian cathedral in a entertaining kind of amusement park kind of setting. I thought, how are we going to handle the altar thing? And I thought, well, the best way to handle it is to tell the truth that I've investigated in an occult research sense of where Christianity is derived from. So if you go and read up in some of the deep academic journals about how Christianity was formed, you can see there's a lot of pagan elements that have been brought into Christianity. There's Mithras, the sun god from the Romans. There's a whole heap of others. There's links to Odin as well in the Norse side of things. There's Eosta, the goddess another pagan goddess in there, where we got Easter from. So I wanted to include them in this altar scene at the back that sort of showed a more truer representation of the origins of Christianity. Very controversial move, I know, but we were just playing with that theme, taking it a step further. And of course, the ultimate heresy, having Schism album cover in the middle of the tabernacle, I thought was a fun thing to do as well.
Oh, no wonder you were a mate of the Prince of Darkness. All
Yeah.
right. Schism 21C. What's happening with live performances of
So
upcoming dates?
we've done our first show at the Odeon Richmond, which we did back in May, and that is being recorded. It's full video recording of that that's coming out, thanks to the wonderful Harry Williams, who does these series of great gigs on YouTube. So that's coming. We're getting ready to go back out again. We recently had to have some life stuff get in the way. Gordon had to move house, and I went overseas to Thailand. So we're back and we're resetting to go out live again. So we'll be playing around some clubs around Melbourne soon. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Schism 21C, the album and the band back again for the first time in decades. And this is pretty exciting stuff. All ready to put themselves back into the filing cabinet of rock and roll history and music. Simon, been great to catch up.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thanks for watching, your listeners and viewers.